All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We got the privilege, Brad, of being the closing act for the evening. So we'll warm you up for drinks in about 20 minutes or so?
Yeah,
15,
exactly.
20 minutes?
Bring on the wine. I'll keep it very light, you
This,
guys,
this,
and
by
get
the
you
way,
ready to drink.
this is not water. No. Brad's going to be talking about an issue that resonates a lot with our membership. We're hearing increasingly about trust in messaging, and that the threat that it has on the future of the industry. And I'll give it to you to take us from there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick. So I wanted to just kind of go over high level, something that's on everyone's mind right now. We think about what happened in voice, over a decade ago. We think about us as an end consumer losing trust when our phone rings if we don't see the caller ID and we don't know who's calling us, right? Who's going to answer the phone to that? Each time you do, you're baited with some sort of information, right? Well, in our world today, there's still 13.5 billion calls being made, but out of the 50% of the phone calls that get answered, the end user of the device, if it's an unknown call, less than 17% of them are getting answered. So there's really a attribute there showing that we've kind of lost trust in that really big thing. So moving over to today's economy, a lot of us are on the go more than ever, right? Text messages, MMS messages, or even RCS. Those are all things that we're doing on the side, on the fly. Well, people ask and think about, okay, why did I just get this text message? Who is this company that sent me a package? Why do I need to click there, right? We've lost a lot of trust in those 27 billion text messages being sent every day. Many end users have adopted other ways to communicate in platforms. I mean, there's over 1 billion registered for RCS now. There's over 2.7 billion for under WhatsApp and Viber alone. And then you think about all of us that talk through social media that don't even want to deal with the phone anymore. It's a huge problem, right? It's all on our minds. We're all in this industry, and we're all thinking about what we do to solve this together.
Yeah, and we've seen stats that my colleague Gavin shared earlier today, and I'll be talking about this some more tomorrow in another panel. We're looking at, for example, overall, roughly 30% of A2P one-time password messages are the bread and butter of the industry, and the brands are losing trust, right? They're worried and they're moving to other channels. So this is across the board.
Yeah. Absolutely, and just to kind of cover, and this is a very, very basic slide. I didn't go into this. In fact, there's many people in this room, this little gray arrow on this slide. But really, in a communication network, there's two big components here, right? There's a lot in the middle between a telecom provider that's responsible for establishing and maintaining the connectivity, and then the enterprise client, which is who's managing the end client and the program, the end users, right? Well, in the gray box, there's a lot of different companies doing a lot of different things. But overall, just level setting to without that complexity of the network is really what's designed that these two key stakeholders are really doing is they're identifying and validating the use cases that a subscriber signs up for a program, right? They're creating a feedback loop of those activities, right? As somebody is signing up for a service, talking on the phone, the telecommunication provider might be providing the networking, but there's all of these things back and forth that you might have questionable activity. Could be fraud, could be misuse or abuse within that network. And then the enterprise client or the telecom provider is providing some sort of due diligence to ensure that all of that onboarding is everything that we say it is. And then the two partner together to ensure terms and conditions of the program guidelines are met. That also is compliance. So at a high level, that's really what's going on behind the scenes. And then everything in the gray is kind of in the middle.
Yeah, and I think you might get to this in the next slide, but can you give us a sense then of what the different stages of phone number intelligence are?
Yeah, so I want to kind of talk about NetNumber's solution to the ecosystem. There's many of you guys out in the world today using data as a service, right? There's many of you looking for ways to solve problems with data. So this is one example of a way that might lead you to think about the sources of data you have sitting around that you can call into your ecosystem at any given time. But at NetNumber, we have a core suite of products for phone intelligence. We offer global data solutions. So really just thinking about how we plug and play real-time data into that ecosystem is really where I want to take this. So understanding who an end user is on your network, not from a PII aspect, which many of you know there's much regulation around beyond a phone number, really conducting a carrier ID lookup, which is our number portability lookup that we have. It's kind of establishing a footprint on a user entering your ecosystem. A user can be called a subscriber as well. Really what we do is we're taking people through, as they transact through a platform, we're identifying who the operator is, what the line type is with that service, right, at a global scale. Then the next step really in the equation is what happens with phone numbers. They switch networks. A subscriber will change a provider, right? We really drill into that on establishing an ecosystem and figuring out where that is.
Just on that one. So
Yeah.
How do changes in like the operator's phone number or line type help you assess risk?
Yeah, so it helps you assess risk because if a fraudster gets a hold of a phone number and your identity information, they're going to want to go through and move to a different operator or carrier than the one that you have so that you're not suspicious to it. If I'm going to drain your bank account as a hacker or a fraudster, I'm probably going to want to take over your phone number. Well, a lot of times, what's the first step in seeing that? Is that network activity changing? So that becomes before the infamous SIM swap that we might hear about in the mobile identity forefront. Comes before any of that. There's usually a good old-fashioned change in an operator or line type. That's one way to keep your ecosystem, to where you're looking at the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
Next off in the process, we have a service that is designed to validate and verify connectivity with phone numbers. So basically, phone numbers sit around in our ecosystem over time. However we're using or administering them to communicate, they get stale. People change phone numbers. They get it deactivated. A subscriber might not pay their bill, right? A subscriber might use that as a secondary phone number, and there's just no activity on it, right? Well, we have a service called Number Check that really does that for you. And then we move on to...
Well, just before moving on to that, a quick question on that.
Yeah,
What would be
course.
some of the best practices around interpreting that data?
The best practices is the way that we serve it is we serve Number Check on a scale from 0 to 5. The higher the score, the more we trust that phone number as we see it in the ecosystem. So really how you interact with that is if you're let's say that you're an OTP provider, this gives you a way to check if phone numbers are even valid before paying for that SMS to happen. It helps you check if somebody's going to potentially pick up the phone if you make a call, or somebody's going to receive the text message that you're sending. So that's kind of the example of how we funnel through on a what we call a confidence index that just basically is a scale 0 to 5. We tell you what it is that we see through our network at NetNumber.
Excellent.
Yeah. So then just moving on with, establishing an ecosystem to keep everyone safe. We have solutions to where we're determining active risky events. If there is a phone number that is spamming the network and you're doing something with it in your ecosystem, in real time, you probably want to know that, right? You probably want to flag that and take action. And then the last one that we really have in our NetNumber ecosystem is monitoring for changes to reset the triage. We actually released a product this December, late in the business year. It's called Number Watch. You can register your whole ecosystem, and we can tell you when operator and line type changes happen in real time. Very powerful tool when you think about keeping users and subscribers safe as they're touching your platform. So really, step one is really identifying your data tools, making sure that they're real time to establish a foundation with a phone number, your ecosystem. Really making that footprint, looking at changes, looking at everything that you have, and starting to scale or model that out to determine whether or not that phone number is spamming or whether or not you're on the receiving end of it, right? Depending upon where your business model is. The second step is really observing those behaviors. That's where I call it the pre-data science comes in, because you don't need a fancy data scientist to figure out a couple high-level things like in green that I have on the board here. But all of us that are in this business, we already know if we see this data, right? So really just establishing what behaviors are positive and what are adverse as phone numbers enter and exit your ecosystem. And then really the third's simple. You just take action on them. Whether you decide based off of the behaviors to engage with the phone number, there's certain actions to where you want to re-verify a phone number. Maybe it's sat in your ecosystem for a long time, or there's been some sort of change activity to where you want to make sure that that person is still the person or business that's assigned to that phone number. And then there's the fun part, which we don't do enough of, obviously, because we have all these robocalls and spams going on in the world, and that's block. Really honing in on those adverse actions in your ecosystem is really important. And that's so that we can start blocking those sorts of communications that are frustrating and we're losing trust in the ecosystem today.
All right, good.
Yeah, and just kind of a high level is the key really to take away to this slide. It's everything. We're in communication service providers. Everything should be real time. Things happen really fast, especially around the fraud in your ecosystem. A fraudster will take over something without you knowing and do as much as they can in little time without you knowing, right? So it's important to use real-time data in your business processes. Whether it's buying them from netnumber or some of the other wonderful folks that are here, it's important to buy whatever it is you need to keep people safe so that they don't lose trust. Really learn and intimately understand it so that you can enforce it and take action upon it. So this is an example of what I tell all of our wonderful netnumber clients. Over to the right there is, if all of your risk is coming from a risky operator, okay, there might be legitimate users entering your ecosystem that use that operator, but a lot of times they're not. So you probably want to watch it a little bit differently than an operator that you're trusting through your number portability lookup. Those changes in line types, 99% of them are legitimate. However, that 1%, that's one way to get ahead of it before a SIM card is replaced to a different network and device, right? Or anything, adverse that can potentially happen. It's usually the first indicant of it. Maximizing your efficiency with validating and verifying connectivity. That's really important because, as you all know, there's a cost to sending every single voice message or making every call, right? So it's just making sure that you're using that data right before you engage in real time. Risky events, and I'll be honest with you, in the industry today, I see some folks that work on this. Detecting and determining risky events needs to evolve for our space in order for there to be trust. We don't have 100% of a solution today. I don't think anybody does, but I think we're all fighting towards it. I've seen so many speakers at all of these events talking about it. So I will say, getting whatever you have in there, calling it, trusting it real time, and interpreting from it is critical. And then all of these different things, they all roll up to just good old-fashioned monitoring changes and interacting off of the behaviors. So really, that's what I want to roll up
Thanks.
today. Yeah.
So look, we did get the honor of being the closing act, but we're also running a bit out of time. What we'd like to suggest is if any of you have questions, what we can do is find Brad in the lounge over a drink and harass him a little bit around the questions you have on this presentation.
Yeah.
So on that note, I'd like to thank you and thank netnumber for this last presentation of the day, and wish everybody a nice evening.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.